Hey, yo everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing my comic pull list for the week. Now, this week is a week 1 week, so it's going to be a smaller week. Usually week 1 is my smallest of the weeks. Yeah. So we got mostly DC with some Dynamite and IDW sprinkled on top. Putting a little flavor on the yumminess that is DC. And we might as well start where we always start, with a little bit of Batman in our life. And that will be of Detective Comics issue number 15, part of the Death of the Family story arc. And as you can see here, or more or less a Death in the Family tie-in, you got the flip sleeve here, which is the Joker's face, and then the corresponding character the comic goes with. And then in the back, you have a list of the comics that tie into Death of the Family. So this picks up exactly where the previous issue left off, with the marriage of Poison Ivy and Clayface. And basically, Poison Ivy's made a lot of enemies over the past few issues of Birds of Prey, Batman, and various other things. No one trusts Poison Ivy, so she kind of teams up with Clayface, and Clayface thinks that they are married. Now, exactly what's going on here, don't really know, because see, Clayface isn't necessarily a human being. He can't really be seduced or kind of manipulated like typical people of Poison Ivy's victims are. You know, she gives them a kiss and the toxin goes into them, and then they go, "Oh, Poison Ivy will do anything for you. You want me to go to beat up that baby? I'll do it. You want me to go kick that dog? I'll do it." But again, Clayface is, well, he's Clay. So how does this work out? Just have to read and see. And the backup issue in this is the epilogue for Clayface and Poison Ivy and how it comes to an end. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good. What I really liked about this was the characterization of Clayface, and you almost feel bad for this guy because Clayface is really invested in this relationship with Poison Ivy. And whether or not he's being controlled or not, or how much of him is being controlled, is really up to question, or how much of it he truly believes he feels towards Poison Ivy. And it really kind of adds these layers to the character, and I particularly like the backup story, which kind of gives the ending to the Clayface and Poison Ivy story. Batman gets a nice brand spanking new costume in this, and I am a sucker for Batman having random costumes for certain things. I think it throws back to when I played with the Batman action figures back in the day, the animated series ones. You had like Jetpack Batman or Undersea Batman or a special acid resistant Batman. They all had a silly gimmick, but they were fun. And it's more believable for Batman to have these various different costumes. I mean, Superman or Spider-Man to have like an acid resistant costume makes no sense. But Batman to have a random costume that has a special feature, kind of cool, and it kind of makes sense. So I like that. I thought the Batman Clayface fight was great, and I thought it was interesting because Batman doesn't necessarily win at first. He has to retreat, which shows that Batman, while is as great as he is still a vulnerable character. And I also liked the Emperor Penguin thing going on, which you're going to have to read to understand. Bad. I don't know if this is really bad, but it doesn't tie into Death of the Family. Joker kind of shows up in a way, but it doesn't really tie in, at least not as much as you'd think it would. On the whole, whether or not you should get it, I was actually very impressed by this issue. I found it very fun and enjoyable. Keyword is fun. And they use characters like Clayface and Poison Ivy, which I do enjoy, and they continue to build up Penguin as a big player in the Batman universe. I will give this a 5 out of 5. Enjoyable comic. So on to Batwing issue number 15. So Batwing is facing up against Father Lost, which is the manipulative bad guy that can manipulate stuff, manipulate people, manipulate deodorant. He can manipulate almost anything. He has this mind control ability, and he actually uses it on Batwing yet again. But the question is, I mean, how does Batwing fight a guy that can control legions of people and can control Batwing? And the other question is this, is what happens when Batwing loses control? Not necessarily when he's mind controlled, but when it's something else. Will Batwing cross that line that Batman says a no-no? Just gonna have to read to see. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good. I liked Batwing's solution to the problem that he has in this issue. I like Dawn as a character, the pseudo ally vigilante. I like their backstory and how it kind of intertwines. I liked the fellow police officer whose name I completely forget and I will look up now, who Batwing as David works with, and their relationship and how it's growing, and kind of the Leah, that's her name, kind of the teasing that she knows he's Batwing. I kind of like how that's going on. Bad. With how powerful Father Lost was, I felt as though he kind of went out with a whimper. But besides that, it wasn't a bad issue. It was good. I enjoyed it. 3 out of 5. Moving on to Rot World. For both Swamp Thing and Animal Man, which one should we do first? Okay, let's do Swamp Thing. So basically, Swamp Thing goes to Gotham in his consistent and constant search for his one and true love, Abigail Arkham. But does he find her there, or does he find a startling truth to what happened to her? See, we constantly get flashbacks to Rot World and then a year ago and what happened to certain people's allies. What we do find out is someone does not make it out of this comic in one piece, and we find the startling truth of which Bat family member is still alive and what is keeping them alive. Who is it, and how is this being done? We have to read and see. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good. I like the surprise at the end, particularly with the Batman member and how they are still alive, for lack of a better term. The Abigail Arcane stuff that's going on, I find her story to be interesting. Although it is a flashback and chances are it'll be whitewashed away, it was still interesting. And I find it interesting how a certain character was written off. I'm gonna have to read to understand. Bad. I feel as though with Rot World, I love it, but at the same time, I feel as though instead of going to the main goal of the comic, which is of course fighting the Rot itself, Swamp Thing and Animal Man are kind of going in different directions and going off and doing miscellaneous adventures. Uh, so it's just a minor pet peeve I have, but on a whole, this was a good issue. 4 out of 5. I recommend getting it. On to its counterpart, which is Animal Man, issue number 15, part of Rot World Red Kingdom Part 3. So that was Green Kingdom Part 3, Red Kingdom Part 3. And the big thing in this is we find out what happens in Metropolis. There was something big that happens in Metropolis. A certain superhero is stuck there, and it's not who you think it is. And in addition to that, we find out that Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, our good old friend Frankie, has found a way to actually prevent the rot from taking over someone's body. But is the cost to prevent the rot from taking over your body too high? Don't want to reveal. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good, I liked the Frankenstein tie-in. I liked his crossover. I liked the ending, kind of a shocker of an ending, and the question on where is Superman was addressed in this, and I did enjoy that. And I think Animal Man has a little bit more of a well-rounded supporting cast in this. Swamp Thing feels as though he's almost alone again, where in Animal Man he's constantly building up with Black Orchid and Beast Boy and Frankenstein and Constantine. He's kind of got his own little posse going for him. Bad. I can't really say there's too much bad about this. The only thing I can really say is just like Swamp Thing, it's going in a different direction than I was expecting, which isn't necessarily bad. It's just something that on a whole, I did enjoy this a little bit more than Swamp Thing. I'll give it a 4.3 out of 5. On to Red Sonja issue number 72. So I finally can review Red Sonja because I finally caught up with Red Sonja. Now, basically, this issue starts off with Red Sonja causing trouble like she always causes and gets thrown into prison. But this isn't an ordinary prison. This is like hell on earth prison. It is like a pit. It's like from the Dark Knight Rises. You get thrown in the pit. You get screwed over, tortured, killed, maimed, yada yada yada. And that's basically what Red Sonja gets thrown into. But the question is, why was she thrown into this pit, and what is her true motives for being in this area? Of course, it's Red Sonja, so she's always going to be causing trouble. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good is I like how there's more to this story than you would actually think. More than just, oh, Red Sonja got thrown into prison. There's more to it. I particularly liked the fact that this tied in a bit with some previous story arcs, which is something that I think Red Sonja has been missing since issue 49. There has been very little connection with previous story arcs. In this, there's references to the previous story arc, and there's also some characters that make an appearance in here. The bad guy that shows up in this for the just one issue is scary. He's intimidating, and the fight between him and Sonja, it was okay. Bad. I felt as though usually the narrative dialogue is pretty good. It doesn't interfere too much with the comic, but I felt as though it was a little too heavy on this issue. And although I did mention that this does make reference to previous Sonja story arcs, it still feels like a bit of a disconnect. But see, the great thing about Sonja is she also has the reincarnation theme to her too. So it's okay if this feels a little bit disconnected, and you'll understand why if you read it. Uh, Before I get into the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get it, I should let you guys know that the reason why I read Red Sonja is because it is like a traditional sword and sorcery like comic. But the thing is Red Sonja just has that fun factor that I think a lot of comics don't have. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but but it does at the same time in a weird way. It's not worried about the constraints that usual comic books have on it, like continuity or having to make sure certain characters are in character. Uh, it is what it is, and it enjoys being that. I think that's the real appeal to Red Sonja. So, good. I gave you the good. I gave you the bad. The whether or not you should get it. Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed this. I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5. Not the best Red Sonja has pulled out, but still pretty good. On to the Human Bomb, issue 1 of 4. So, I'm picking up the Human Bomb because it is yet another miniseries pulled out by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti. And they did Phantom Lady and Dollman and The Ray. I have the 4 issues for The Ray. I haven't read it yet, but I feel as though there's something going on with these miniseries that they're doing. And I'll tell you why when we get into the whether or not you should get it. Who is the Human Bomb? Well, the Human Bomb was a character originally created in the 1950s, I believe, and there's been multiple incarnations. He was a member of the Freedom Fighters, and basically, the Human Bomb can do what the Human Bomb you think he could do: blow up and cause explosions and impact and all that stuff. Like I said, there's been multiple incarnations, and this incarnation is no different. His name is Michael Taylor. This is a new incarnation for the Human Bomb. And basically, it tells his origin. It tells where he comes from, what he was doing before he became the Human Bomb, and the secret on why he's a Human Bomb. And I'll tell you why. It has something to do with his time served in the army and how he got programmed into becoming a weapon, for lack of a better term. Um, it kind of sounds vague right now, but it makes more sense when you read it. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good. I really do like this origin for the character. I think it's interesting. I think it's fun. Basically, without giving too much away, him and his fellow troops, army mates, they got attacked, and basically they got programmed to become living weapons. But he was a little different than his buddies. And again, I don't want to give away too much, but I like the origin. It gives the character a great background. I also like how it ties into the DC universe too, because we see references to various different organizations and things in the DCU. So I did like that. I find the character enjoyable. I find as though he's kind of a straight man for lack of a better term. On a team, he would be the straight man, I believe. He kind of has a feel of a mix of Captain America with Cyclops, if that makes sense. Or maybe not Cyclops. I don't know. He feels like that straight man, the stiff stiff up his chin kind of person, um, but in a good way. I really do like how it left you off on a cliffhanger, on a good cliffhanger, and wanting more. And I think that's the most important thing. And I like a reference to a an important DC character shows up in this at the end. The first appearance of a character in the New 52, in addition to the Human Bomb, someone else, which is why I think there's a connection between all these comics. Because see, the Ray showed up in Phantom Lady, recruiting the Phantom Lady for a team. And I think they're going to show up in Human Bomb eventually. I think they're starting the Freedom Fighters back up with these minis. I could be wrong. What do you think? Bad. I can't think of any bad about this. This was just a great first issue. 5 out of 5. Yeah, pick it up. Haunted Tank, GI Combat, or GI Combat featuring Haunted Tank, issue number 7. This also has the Unknown Soldier in it. Basically, this is a conclusion to the Haunted Tank story. The two soldiers go up against the, what is it called? The Wheel of Death? The Nazi Wheel of Craziness? It has a name to it. I forget. It's like the Nazi Wheel of Death, and it's the tank versus the super whale, and the ultimate conclusion of Gramps with his boy taking on the super whale. And then Unknown Soldier kind of gets a little closure in his life after he takes on the big bad guys. He goes back home, only to find that home is the same but changed at the same time. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. I really like the Haunted Tank story. Well, the story I think started off not rocky. Actually, the story started off good. I think it really closed very well, and I think that helped the story a lot. The Unknown Soldier had some anticlimacticness with the bad guys, but it has some nice tones to it towards the end where he goes back home to his house that his family used to live in, which was nice. Bad. There's no real bad about this, other than the fact that I think Unknown Soldier was really cut short and it really wasn't as interesting as it could have been. I mean, he just kind of fights the bad guy and then he goes back home. That's it. A little anticlimactic. Whether or not you should get it, I'll give this a 3.5 out of 5. It was a fun issue. It just didn't wow me like I think a lot of the other issues this week could have. But I was surprised by the fact that the Haunted Tank story was better than I thought it was going to be. And it leaves things open for more, which is always good. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number, 185. So basically, we got quite a bit happening in here, and I'm going to try to get through it real quickly without confusing you. Destro is dealing with his cousin while at the same time having to deal with Zartan and all the internal workings with the Cobra, kind of Cobra people. They're not Cobra people, but you know what I mean. Basically, there's a lot going on with the bad guys, and who is getting the one-ups is the real question. On the flip side, Dr. Mindbender has been able to perfect his mind-controlling device and has started using it on the Joes. So when it's Joes versus Joes, who wins and who loses? Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. As with some of the recent issues in G.I. Joe, I've been enjoying some of the more Cobra stuff than I've enjoyed the Joe stuff. The Destro story, I think, is interesting and fun, and I've always found Destro to be my favorite of the Cobra people. Again, I'm using that term lightly. The bad guys. Because he's not really bad, but he is bad. He's a necessary evil, for lack of a better term. And I did like, I don't know why, but I just like how goofy Dr. Mindbender is with his mind control device. And I kind of like that story going on where it's Joe versus Joe. Bad is I feel as though, Duke and Scarlet and, I don't know. I just feel as though Stalker, everyone just kind of chilling in the HQ and not really doing anything. I understand they're utilizing some of the lesser known Joes, but I feel as though some of the old school Joes, some of my favorite are just chilling in headquarters now. They're not really doing anything. That's something that does annoy me. I want to see these Joes go out there and kick ass and take names and do what they always do. On a whole, this was an okay issue, but I'll give it 3 out of 5. Nothing that would blow my mind. We have 4 issues left, my friends. Action Comics issue number 15. So, Action Comics issue number 15 is kind of a continuation to the Fifth Dimension story that we got last month. And we get kind of a reinterpretation of Mr. Mixapixel, if I'm saying that right. I always pronounce his name wrong. And we find out that there is another fifth dimension imp going around, the evil one that is attacking Superman on all fronts, in the past, present, and future. Because see, the fifth dimension doesn't see time as a continuous stream, it sees time like this piece of paper. Past, present, future, I can attack you at any point. It's up to me to see which point I want to attack you at. And Superman has to deal with that. Can he fight an opponent that can attack him at any time, anywhere at the same time? If that makes sense. Attack you in the past and the future at the same time. Just gonna have to read and see. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good. It finally feels as though a lot of the stuff Grant Morrison has laid down is starting to come together, which is nice because some of Grant Morrison's stuff on Action Comics has been confusing as all hell and a little uninteresting. Just some. But now it's starting to tie together a little bit better, which is good. The dialogue in this was actually really nice, and I did like the reinterpretation and the reintroduction of Mr. Mixapixel. Again, if I'm saying that right. And the art was really good too. I enjoyed the art. I felt as though Superman looked like Christopher Reeve's Superman-ish, kind of. And I thought Superman was very well in character. It felt like your traditional good old-fashioned Superman. And the last good is we get to see Lana Lang, which I believe this is Lana's second appearance in the New 52. Her first one was in a backup issue, I believe. I could be wrong. So, good reintroduction. Bad as the backup story was not quite as interesting as it could be. I think it was just a little too far out for me. But besides that, I'm still going to give this a 5 out of 5 because it was a fun issue and it feels as though Grant Morrison's starting to tie the threads together. Green Arrow issue number 15. Again, if you guys don't know, the only reason why I'm staying on Green Arrow is because Jeff Lemire is going to be jumping on Green Arrow soon and I'm pumped for that. Basically, this is the fall of Green Arrow. Green Arrow is injured from his battle with the Warhawks. He's running out of supplies, running out of money, and he's running out of leads. And basically, he has to go up against this guy whose name is Harrow, I believe. Yeah, Harrow. And he runs a dog fighting pit, and he puts a hit on Green Arrow, and Green Arrow basically has to go up against him and try to take this guy out before someone else takes him out. Can Green Arrow pull this off? Or will his injuries and lack of supplies put him in a precarious position? Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good. The dialogue was substantially better in this issue than it was from issue 13 and back. Issue 14 was a pretty good issue. In issue 15, it has good dialogue in that sense. I particularly like the downfall of Green Arrow and how stuff are starting to weigh heavy on him. And Green Arrow as being a character that's trying to stay proactive and ignore the shit that's going on. So I did like that. Bad, I thought the bad guy was cool until they made him into... He was intimidating at first, but then he became just another random villain. So I kind of lost interest in the villain. I didn't really care for him. On the whole, whether or not you should get it, it was a good issue. I think it had its moments. Nothing to write home to. I'll give it 3.5 out of 5. Green Arrow is getting slightly better, which is good. I'm actually starting to enjoy Green Arrow now, which is important because I never really enjoyed him beforehand. 2 comics left. World's Finest, issue number 7, Huntress and Power Girl. So basically, okay, I'm gonna just jump into this. It's Huntress and Robin teaming up while Power Girl goes to some place to take on little kids in apocalypse technology. Here's the thing that I find interesting about World's Finest. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to give a 3 for this comic because what I find absolutely fascinating is this comic has great dialogue, great character interaction, and some great art. And then the story absolutely makes no sense. For example, Huntress and Robin have a talk, but they never really have a talk. They instead get dropped off by Power Girl in a pack of wolves, fight the wolves, and then fights a genetically altered wolf, which we know nothing about or where he came from, and apparently has something to do with something with Apocalypse. And then they kind of just never have their talk. And Power Girl goes to this random place in, I want to say the Amazon, but it could be in Africa. I can't tell. And deals with these little kids. And a Boom 2 shows up. And what the hell is happening in this comic? On one hand, it's really fun. And on the other hand, I have no idea what's going on. So I'm giving it a 3 because it had enjoyableness to it, but it's still perplexing the shit out of me. Actually, I'm going to give it 2.5. 3 is a little generous. 2.5. And finally, Earth 2, issue number 7. um, the Green Arrow versus Hawk Girl is a little deceiving. Not Green Arrow, Green Lantern. Basically, Alan Scott and Kendra kind of, trade Lincoln's accounts or Facebook accounts, and they talk about their past and who they are and what they did and all that stuff. And basically, Kendra says to him, listen, you got to stop being a dick and join up with me and Flash and make a team. And, again, Green Arrow doesn't want to become a team. We get more Sandman stuff, which is interesting. I find the Sandmen to be interesting in the story. And the Sandmen also have to deal with Mr. Terrific. Our Mr. Terrific, Michael Holtz. Good, bad, whether or not you should get good. The Kendra and Alan Scott thing was fun. I particularly like Terry Salone interacting with who is that gentleman that works for the World Police? He's a new character, and I'm still learning his name. Commander Khan. I really like Commander Khan. He's kind of a cool guy. Kind of, again, like Human Bomb. Kind of a straight man, but a smart straight man. I like that stuff that went on, and it's good to see Mr. Terrific once again. Bad is I felt as though while there's a lot of good setup being done here, everything feels very separate from each other. The pacing or the synergy between the several stories that going on here, it felt a little off because they had no connection to each other. It's like, here's what's happening in the World Police or the World's Army, and here's what's happening with Hawk Girl and Green Lantern, and here's what's happening with Mr. Terrific and Sandman. I was gonna give this a 3, but rereading it and looking at it again, I'll give it a 4. But the reason why I'm giving it a 4 is just because it didn't have that synergy, and I really would have liked to have that synergy. So yes, that is the comics for this week. I know I didn't do an Andrewcutter pick of the week last week. I'm sorry, time constraints and all that. But which comic will be my pick of the week this week? You're just gonna have to read and see, or wait and see. The next video I do will probably be my question and answer video, so be prepared. Be prepared. Anyways, I'm going to end this review here. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.